Current Resolution 3047 relates to the placing of initiated measures on the statewide ballot. We passed this out of the House about 5 or 6 weeks ago, and at that time the resolution provided that if the initiated measure was determined to have a fiscal impact of $20 million or more, then it would be placed on the general election ballot rather than on a primary election or a special election ballot. In conference committee, we talked about retaining the $20 million as a fixed amount in the Constitution and determined that probably wasn't the best thing to do. We'd like the Constitution to remain in effect for a long time and wouldn't want to go back and have to change a fixed dollar amount if there was inflation or other things. So what we agreed to do in the conference committee was to take out the fixed dollar amount of $20 million and instead put in the words major fiscal impact as determined by law. What that would mean is that if this is passed by the voters, the legislature would then be able to determine and define by statute what a major fiscal impact is. And so that's the only change in this resolution from the way we passed it out initially about 5 or 6 weeks ago. So, Mr. Speaker, I move the adoption of the conference committee report.
Is there any discussion? The question is on the motion of Representative Clemeen to adopt the conference committee report.
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The report is adopted. House will be on 11th order of business. The House has before it House Concurrent Resolution 3047, which has been read. Mr. Chief Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, House Concurrent Resolution 3047 was introduced by Representatives Carlson, K. Koppelman, Nathy, and Vigasaw. House Concurrent Resolution 3047 is a concurrent resolution to amend and reenact Section 2 of Article 3 of the Constitution of North Dakota relating to the fiscal impact of initiated measures. Mr. Speaker.
Representative Clemeen.
Mr. Speaker, members of the Assembly, as I said, this is a constitutional amendment relating to the fiscal impact of initiated measures. As the resolution reads now, if there is a major fiscal impact as determined by Legislative Council, then the measure would be placed on the general election ballot for a vote by the voters in the expectation that there will probably be more people voting in a general election than in a primary election. You'll note that the existing provision in this constitutional measure that we adopted in I think it was the 2003 session, and that provided on line 20 of page 1 of the bill, the Legislative Assembly may provide by law for a procedure through which the Legislative Council may establish an appropriate method for determining the fiscal impact of an initiated measure and for making the information regarding the fiscal impact available to the public. We did that in 2005 and amended it in 2009. Section 16.10117 deals with the estimated fiscal impact of an initiated measure. If this Resolution 3047 is approved by the voters, it is likely all we would need to do is to amend that section of the statute to define what a major fiscal impact is. It wouldn't change any of the other provisions of the section as to the procedure, nor would it change any of the timing or anything. It would just mean that under that statute, now Legislative Council has to determine the estimated fiscal impact, and legislative management then holds hearings on that to allow public input, and then after that, Legislative Council makes a report available to the public and to the Secretary of State on the fiscal impact. That's the existing law. What this new provision in the Constitution would say is, the only thing it would say additional is if it had a major fiscal impact, the measure would have to go on the initiated ballot. And the major fiscal impact would be determined by law, which would mean determined by the statute, and we could change that from time to time as necessary based on inflation or any other factors. So that's the only change, members of the Assembly. I ask for a green vote on House Concurrent Resolution 3047.
Is there any discussion? Representative Mooney.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, would the bill carrier yield to a question?
Representative Clemene, will you yield to a question?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Mooney.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Clemene, my question is, who decides what major is?
Mr. Speaker, Representative Mooney, the Legislative Assembly would define that in the statutes if this is approved by the voters.
Thank you, Representative Clemene. And Mr. Speaker and members of the Assembly, Mr. Speaker, if I may,
You may.
I have a major problem with this verbiage as being declared major. So the question would be, is that 20,000, 20 million, 120 million? I really don't think that we should be trying to put this type of limiter out there that's so broadly based that allows future legislative assemblies to decide what they think major might be. Mr. Speaker, members of the Assembly, I would respectfully request a no vote on this. Thank you.
Is there further discussion? The House has before it for final consideration House Bill, or House Concurrent Resolution 3047. The clerk will open the key and you may record your vote. Has every member voted? Do any members wish to change their vote? The key will be closed and the clerk will take the record. The final vote shows 71 yea, 18 nay, 5 absent, not voting. House Concurrent Resolution 3047 is declared passed. The House is on the 7th order of business.